Hey, I've been stretched a bit thin this week, so I didn't have time to get a full-size what if out. I am working on one and it should be out next week, but for now I decided to do this very small what if. Even though it's not mentioned as much, this is easily one of the most unfair eliminations in the show, where Max gets eliminated with Scarlett only because Chris is tired of evil after what Scarlett did. Max did not fail any part of the show that warranted his elimination here. He didn't get the most votes, he didn't fail the challenge goal in any auto-elimination-esque way. He was just removed because Chris snapped his fingers and said so. So this what if is exploring the very short remaining endgame if Max wasn't removed from the game. The Scarlett episode basically goes the same. I did lightly consider if Max would become a bit more nice after this because of what he went through with Scarlett was nothing short of traumatizing, and I thought maybe he could reconsider and realize being evil was actually scary, and I like this idea for him, but given how shortly after all that he does the evil laugh at Scarlett's elimination and, claims himself as the only evil left on the island. Also, Max's personality history of being ridiculous, I still think he tried to be an evil mastermind. Scarlett would be removed for trying to blow up the island. Chris and Chef would laugh together at him, with Chris saying they really needed a good joke like that after today. And the episode would still begin with Sky creating an alliance with Sugar, as despite their differences, she could really use an ally. Max stalks Jasmine and Sean's morning picnic through a bush, worried about their close-knit connection so far into the game. During this picnic, Jasmine suggests the idea with Sean to split the money if they both make it to the finale. I feel as though most people hearing in on this conversation could notice Sean's clear hesitation on splitting the money with Jasmine, as he says it with an obvious pause and worried look in contrast to Jasmine's eager expression. However, Max is not most people. He's one of the most socially unaware players, and he probably wouldn't catch on to that. Instead, he would have a confessional voicing his fear at this obviously rock-solid connection, and how difficult it was to get Scarlett away from him when she was so infatuated with him. This pairing could be dangerous. Luckily, he has just the right evil and deliciously simple plan to ruin their picnic and associate the idea of working together with the terror he will send through their veins. Max makes an attempt to grumble like a bear from the bush he's hiding in. Neither Sean or Jasmine fall for it, and Jasmine says, "Max?" Max responds in a raspy, quiet voice, "No, it's a bear." Jasmine, now having a better chance to hear the location of the voice, grabs a glass of orange juice and sneaks towards her with her and Sean smiling at each other. Max again in the raspy voice tries to give a threatening bear snarl, which in turn Jasmine plays along and acts scared, exclaiming about their orange juice to set up for her then pouring the entire glass of orange juice over the bush and all over Max. Max screams from the cold liquid running down his shirt and runs out the bush while Sean and Jasmine snicker. Max has a confessional shivering and complaining in a whiny tone about the pulp and the juice, how this will stain his favorite shirt. He begins to explain how he will do everything in his power to enact revenge, but Chris would call the cast to come over to the base of the mountain for the challenge with a loud ring over the intercom, interrupting and disorienting Max. Before Chris explains the challenge, Sugar would be standing next to Max and smell him, asking if he lost a fight to an orange. Max glares at Sean and Jasmine, who are grinning at him, and Jasmine even cheekily waving. Max simply tells Sugar it was a big orange. Chris explains the challenge and it begins. Jasmine and Sean still get the early lead as Sugar and Sky fall behind with Sky having to drag her. Max is pretty slow, but I do think he'd be able to keep a slight lead over Sky dragging Sugar, but they both still pass him when the crocodiles chase them. Max is confused why Sugar ran past him, demanding an answer. Sky, still running past, just says green and scaly. Max puts a finger to his chin, thinking diligently, guessing a sick sweaty person? His incorrect answer is shown to him as he hears the robotic chomping of the alligators. Max is a bit scared at first. However, he turns around and looks at the alligators with an evil grin. He has a confessional explaining how these alligator pets will serve him indubitably in enacting revenge on Jasmine and Sean. And after he took a croc bite in the caves and his disloyal servant refused to suck out the venom, his body's immune system has learned to fight off the croc's venom, so now he can lead them with no fear of their danger. Max makes a leader's speech telling the alligators to kneel to his wrath and serve him as loyal mutts. And because Max has no animal taming skills we know of, and they're robotic animals, this wouldn't work. And after a few loud chomps and steps towards Max, he backs out of his plan, running with Sugar and Sky. All three of them would hold onto the hanging TV that Chris set up to talk to the contestants, and because Sugar and Sky originally took the two vertical sides of the TV, and Max definitely isn't athletic enough to get to the top of the TV, he would grab onto the bottom side of the TV and curl up, keeping him close enough to the ground for an alligator to bite his ass. Luckily, kinda, the TV would still fall from their combined weight after all the alligators chase a nearby goat instead. Sugar would still have a pretty rough landing and bruise her nose. Sky checks in to see if she's okay when Sugar starts breaking out in laughter. Sky is uncomfortable, sure that Sugar suffered some brain damage, but Sugar, who's holding her stomach from laughter, points behind Sky. Sky turns around and sees Max wiping his pants off of dust, mentioning how it seems more drafty up here, which is actually due to a big hole in the back of his pants, revealing his heart-patterned boxers. Probably, I don't know what kind of underwear he wears. Sky is not nearly as amused by the scene as Sugar, so she taps Max on the shoulder and informs him. Max is ashamed, turning around and covering the hole while confronting them. Unintentionally has wordplay about holes, causing Sugar to laugh even harder at him. Sky, being embarrassed by Sugar's laughter, apologizes to Max for her. Max has a slight smirk at Sky's comment, having another confessional revealing that after recent events, one thing has been made very clear to him when it comes to being an evil overlord. He's great at it. The issue is the hard work done isn't for him. He's been doing fine with Scarlett as a sidekick, but with her gone, he needs a new henchman to act out his evil deeds. And Sky offers a lot of physical strength to help with that, and with Sugar added onto that, they would hold a majority over Sean and Jasmine for him to enact revenge. Max makes an offer to the two, being a bit careful of his words for once, deciding to name the arrangement as the others do, asking if they're interested in being an alliance together. Sugar pleads with Sky like she's her mom and Max is a puppy, really wanting his funny antics to be a part of their group. Sky thinks about it and has a confessional, acknowledging Max is really weird, but with Sugar already on her side and not many options, she doesn't have the time to be picky. And she isn't intimidated by him. He doesn't give her bad gaming vibes. At best, he's an annoying little brother with an overactive imagination. So Sky agrees to the alliance, but states they should really keep moving while taking Sugar's hand and walking forwards. Max agrees with a snicker as he trails behind. The Sean and Jasmine scene replay are the same. Sean asks her what she'd do with the money and doesn't like the flower dojo business idea, which... fair. They find the stepping stones over lava in a long drop. The crocs come up behind them, making Sean get frozen with terror, which Jasmine breaks him out of by kissing him on the cheek. Sean makes the first jump and lands on his balls after slipping from the grease on the steps, leading to Jasmine saving him before he falls. Then Jasmine gets hit by a swinging log while passing, and gets saved by Sean before falling off. Max, Sky, and Sugar walk up to the grease step stones as another TV with Chris on it falls down, showing how far the drop is. Max exclaims that's a relief. He thought the other one fell because someone was putting on weight, he says while eyeing down Sky. Sky glares at him, asking him to elaborate on that, but before he can, he panics at Sugar crossing the stepstones without even realizing the danger they pose. Sky shushes Max and lets Sugar cross like this. After she makes it to the other side, Max calls Sky a fool, explaining he wanted to get Sugar to come back and carry him across. Sugar is baffled by the idea, telling Max that these are not hog-carrying heels. She left those at home for the beauty pageant hog obstacle course. Sky rolls her eyes as she swings her rope out across the same way she did originally by lassoing the swinging log. However, Max stops her with concern on his face and meekly admits he's too scared to cross by himself. Sky is a bit annoyed and has a confessional saying dealing with both Sugar and Max is harder than she thought, but she made a deal to work with them and she doesn't go back on her word. Sky sits on Max's shoulders, letting the rope hang down to Max where he holds on, and Sky can still lasso the rope from above. Max remains nervous about this idea, looking down the cliff edge, but Sky tells him to relax and the only thing he has to worry about is the weight she put on, making a joking comment towards his earlier implication. She lassos onto the log and the rope carries them both across. Max has a much less graceful landing, but Sky offers a hand to help him up. Max looks at her smiling a bit at the gesture, but doesn't take it and stands up on his own, saying your plan might have worked, but he is a mastermind and he has enough pride to stand up himself. Just as he finishes that statement, his pants fall down from the loose waistband of the gator tagged from behind. Sugar giggles again as Sky gets them back on track, facing Sugar away from Max and leading her up the trail. Max quickly reaches down to pull up his pants, telling them to wait up. He trips as he quickly tries to put them on, making Sugar off screen erupt in laughter again. Sean carrying Jasmine still gets them to the rock wall where they begin scaling it. Max, Sky, and Sugar all arrive at the cave entrance, where Sugar suggests they go through it to hopefully have it take them further up the mountain because she isn't convinced they can pass Sean and Jasmine on the same path. Max scoffs at the idea, saying evil cave layers never have two entrances, that's poor interior design. Sugar does the same disturbing eeny meeny miny mo variant of my mother punched your mother in the head and decides to go into Sky. Max tells him to come back, but once he realizes they won't, he follows into the cave scared to be alone. The three go through the cave until they see an exit with a bunch of sleeping robot bears surrounding it. Chris still loudly speaks on a TV monitor, waking up the robot bears, and Sugar handles the bears on her own. All I will add. Sugar drags both Max and Sky out when she is done, as a delirious Sky asks what happened. Sugar begins to mention the cabbages she was eating all day, with both Sky and Max at the same time saying enough said. Jasmine still falls or rock climbing with Sky, and lands on the other three as they walk on the path outside the cave. Sean still makes it to the top, and defeats a crocodile to get the flag. Originally, Sugar had a confessional acknowledging what Chris said about just the last person to the top being eliminated, and planning to make Sky fall off the edge to assure she'll be eliminated. But now there's the even easier prospect of Max. I do think if this was almost any other villain besides Sugar, they would see the easy value and disadvantage managing Max to get him eliminated because he's so helpless, but Sugar isn't really right in the head. And seeing how much of a fascination she has with Max and the joy he brings her, I still think she would do his plan with Sky, making her fall off the mountainside. Max would be shocked, as even though he does all this big talk, I don't think he would actually take any pleasure of someone being thrown off a cliff like this, especially being Sky, who he respected and liked a bit for helping him out. He mentions this to Sugar, saying how helpful she was and she should be ashamed. Sky, still landing on the crocodile like the original, flies next to them and thanks Max for the compliment, while grabbing on his hand and flying both of them to the top. When Max recovers from the sudden grab, he is touched by Sky helping him. Sky pats him on the head, saying of course, they had a deal, and he didn't turn his back on her. She says the last part while yelling down the mountain, clearly directed at Sugar. Sean says you should be glad about him not turning his back on you, while eyeing the hole in his pants. This challenge ends the same way of Sugar accidentally pushing a tree on Jasmine, and then beating her in a race to the top, getting Jasmine eliminated. Despite just eliminating someone, there is still more to consider of this episode. Originally, Max got eliminated in the last episode and created a double elimination. Right now, if we continued, 4 people would go into the last episode before the finale. And in theory, the next episode could be made as a double elimination to make up by having an auto elimination of the person who got the lowest points and the person with the most deciding who they would take to the finale, which is something similar I've done before in previous what ifs, but I don't really like that structure since it robs the season of having any traditional votes in the merge except for Dave's round. Even though this was already an auto elimination round, I think it still works as a surprise vote here at the end, since Sean did win invincibility this round for being first, so that can actually be used for this round instead of him just being first for the hell of it because it didn't matter because it was an auto elimination. Hence, I am making this round a double elimination. Sugar is celebrating her croc that she put makeup on like the original, don't ask, where Chris announces Jasmine being eliminated for being the last to make it up the mountain, but he doesn't want to send her on the canyon trip alone and announces there's still a vote out happening right now. Obviously, Jasmine doesn't get a vote since she is eliminated, and they can't vote for Sean because he won the challenge. At this reveal, Sugar's smile drops as the other 3 Shu glares at her for what she did today. Kinda spoiler, but yeah, I'm pretty sure the other 3 vote for Sugar, and she gets eliminated. Sky and Max are pretty locked against her for me. Sky, obviously, and Max would see more value in keeping Sky for how much more helpful she was, and especially after how things went with Scarlett, Max wouldn't appreciate how this little Sugar was to Sky. Sean is a bit iffy because I do think there's a world where he would vote Sky with Sugar, because Sky proves a much larger threat at the end. But Sean showed distaste for Sugar in many points in the season, even outright rejecting the idea of working with her in pre-merge, calling her crazy and saying he'd rather I don't remember, I think it was I'd rather let zombies eat my brain than work with Sugar, so yeah, I don't know if he'd really bite that bullet and work with Sugar. And while I don't view Sean as necessarily an honorable competitor that wants to go against the best at the end, I do think he wouldn't want Sugar at the end, especially after trying to push Sky off a mountain, which is just crazy and way too far. Sugar hugs the robot crocodile while Chris hands out the marshmallows, and ends up squeezing it too hard after it's revealed she's eliminated, and has it blow up in her face. Max and Sky chuckle at her with ash from the explosion all over her, making Sugar rant to everyone how she was robbed and unappreciated in her time like all the greats. Chris cuts her off, saying so were the nut jobs, and snapping for Chef to take her, which he does, placing her in the cannon first. Jasmine and Sean still have the quick goodbye peck, and Jasmine hoists herself in the cannon, asking Sugar to scoot over, and when Sugar denies her, Jasmine uses her boot to push her face further in, and they both get fired. The episode begins with Sean waking up in a tree, bummed about Jasmine being eliminated, but then goes over all the specs to his zombie bunker that'll buy up to 1 million, relieved a bit that he doesn't have to split the money with her anymore. Max would wake up Sky much to her annoyance. He explains how he found their partnership beneficial yesterday and suggests they continue their alliance to face each other in the finale. Max has a confessional noting the use Sky was, and with his brains and her brute, they can easily defeat Sean and take each other to the finale where, as any good sidekick would do, she will hand him over the win. Sky has a confessional saying Sean would be the more honorable challenge to face off against, but this is for $1 million, so she has to play smart, and Max would be a much easier challenge, so it sounds like a good deal. Sky shakes Max's hand, agreeing, but tells him that waking her up for this was rude. Max explains he was doing her a favor letting her wake up to his angelic voice, instead of. Max pauses and points in the air, waiting for the harsh sound of Chris on the speakerphone, yet it takes longer than he thought, and once it finally does, it startles him and makes him fall over. Sky giggles at him falling over, and agrees while offering a hand to help him up, asking if he's still too prideful to take it. Max grins at her offer, and in interest of their bond, takes her hand to help him up. Chris would explain the challenge of each contestant making a challenge for themselves and the others to compete in. At the end of each challenge, first place will be awarded 3 points, second 2 points, and last 1 point. The person with the least amount of points at the end of all the challenges will automatically be eliminated. Max has a confessional, a bit worried about this setup since it makes it harder to team up against Sean, but he pays no mind, figuring that Sky will create a challenge that's beneficial for him, being the leader of their duo and all. And as ridiculous as that statement is by Max, there's kind of a point there to consider. If Sky is working with Max, then it is in her best interest to try and create a challenge that both of them would do well at, but I don't think Sky would think of this. As the mindset of a competitor, it's obviously in your best interest to create a challenge you are great at, and with how excited she was for this challenge and how competitive we see her to be in the finale, I don't see her coming up with a different challenge. Especially since, what challenge can she make that would help Max? Like, there isn't an easy answer that I see Sky being able to come up with because he's so useless at everything. Max at first is baffled by the challenge, but not thinking that Sky would betray him, figures there must be some hidden element that she fought through to help him. So when the challenge starts, he tries his best to jump over the hurdles, thinking it will be easier than it looks, but this just causes him to faceplant for not being able to clear the hurdles about 3 solid times before Sky finishes first and Sean shortly after. When Chris announces the points from that round, Max goes off on Sky for betraying their deal to take out Sean. Sean annoyed mentions he's right here. Sky asks why Max revealed that, and what he even means that she betrayed him. And he explains that challenge was in no way helpful to him. Being his sidekick, it's obvious that she should, but Sky cuts his statement off, asking if he just called her his sidekick. Max proudly exclaims that obviously he did, asking what else they would be. Sky furrows her eyebrows, saying, I don't know, maybe friends with mutual respect. She turns away, telling him that he's unbelievable, and she refuses to keep working with someone like him. Max tells her she will rue the day she made an enemy of him, and he's unleashing his full wrath upon her. Chris chuckles at this statement, asking Max if he wants to roll a d20 for that, and continues on to Sean's challenge. Realistically, I'm pretty sure Max gets eliminated from this. I see no way in which he would cross all these trees by jumping to them. He's not even 5th as acrobatic as he would need to be for that. And I also don't see him climbing the top of the first tree for a bridge like Sugar did, because why? Even if I did think he would do that, I still don't even think he's athletic enough to climb the top of the first tree. However, it's a bit lame to end the episode here, so I'm going to continue the challenge a bit more by saying he did climb the top of the tree like Sugar, maybe not for the same bridge reason, but something more in line with his character. I don't know, off the top of my head, he thinks the other two will fail at least a couple times, and from the top of the tree, anytime they try to start over, get back on the first tree, he can break the branches over them and shake the tree to mess them up, and then once they're sufficiently weaker, he'll have the time he needs to cross the trees himself. That's the best guess at making this work. So like Sugar, when Max gets to the top of the tree, it would begin swinging a lot, flying him across the finish line, placing him first for this challenge. Sean would still win second, and Sky third, making all the points tied up. It should go without saying, but I didn't really know what Max would come up with for a challenge he thinks he could win. Thinking very specifically about the extreme weirdness of his character, I decided it would be a bit similar to Sugar's, but instead of a talent show, it's more of an acting performance. The acting scene of a supervillain. Each contestant will have to create a supervillain character to swivel on an evil throne and give a dramatic villain speech laying out their evil plan to take over the world, and end on an evil laugh. Both Sky and Sean would be very confused by this premise. The contestants would all be given time to prepare their characters and outfits, and Sky would go first. It's not obvious to me what she would do for a supervillain, but given her sports background, I decided that it would be a nice reference if she did the Russian antagonist to Rocky, Drago. She would swivel around on the evil throne and begin her performance with a half-assed Russian accent throughout. She explains how she plans to cheat her way to the top of the competition and dethrone rightful champions to gain influence as the world's strongest fighter. She ends the performance with a pretty weak evil laugh in the Russian accent. I don't see Sky getting a very good score because I imagine the judges wouldn't be very impressed with Sky's poor theatrics, the lack of a superpower, and a pretty contrived and not very interesting world domination plan. I do think she gets some points for the costume and trying the Russian accent because it was hilariously bad, so she'd get maybe around a 9 out of 30 from the 3 judges. Sean would be up next, and his supervillain actually came pretty quickly to me. With his fear of zombies, I figured his character would be some sort of mad scientist creating a zombie army to take over the world. And I see Sean doing pretty well in his performance as he believes the fear this imposes on the world, and while I don't see his evil laugh being amazing, it would be exceptional. The judges would be impressed by his performance and backstory, but are a little underwhelmed by the lack of a concrete superpower. But still, they would enjoy it and give a favorable score of, let's say, 21 out of 30. After Sean is given this score, Max pats Sky on the back, saying with that impressive act by Sean and his obvious win here, he supposes this is the end for her. Max mentions how he was originally going to let her do his speech with him to carry her in this challenge, but he was right to cut her as dead weight because she doesn't have an evil bone in her body. Max goes last, and I think his supervillain would be extremely stereotypical. Off the top of my head, I imagine the costume as a black variant of his normal evil mastermind clothes, but with an eye mask and maybe staticky hair for a lambing superpower. But none of that matters because Chris being the way he is, I see him adding Scarlett as a judge here for Max. Obviously I don't see her physically being here after what she did, but I imagine she'd be serving time in a jail or a juvenile center, and Chris would get her to come on a video TV call as a special guest judge for Max, knowing their history. And once Max swivels on the chair and sees Scarlett, he stumbles through his performance extremely scared of her, and unconscious confidently says all his lines, while Scarlett takes many jabs at him for how annoying and incompetent he is. This makes Max break and run off stage before even getting to the evil laugh part, meaning he clearly loses this challenge and gets eliminated. If you want to argue that was contrived and got him eliminated on an unfair basis, yeah, sorta. But to be fair, Max truthfully should have been eliminated in Sean's challenge anyway, so it'd be kind of bullshit to keep him in that challenge to make it last longer, and then have someone else get eliminated because of it. Max is still terrified in the canon, slicking his thumb from the comments Scarlett made. Sky tries to give one last comment to Max in character with the bad Russian accent, saying that was a clean knockout. Sean puts a hand on Sky's shoulder, simply telling her it doesn't work, and Sky, breaking character, admits defeated that she knows. And for the, 3 people that are upset about Sugar being eliminated last round, I did the math and she would still be eliminated even if she competed in this challenge. Because Max would still get the least amount of points and be eliminated from that, and Sean wins the entire challenge off of points and most likely takes Sky to the end. It's possible Sugar because Sky is a big threat, but like I said before, he really doesn't like her, and with the math I ended up getting, Sugar actually ended up winning the most of everyone's challenges, so because of that, Sean received them as, for the most part, pretty equal threats at the end, and then adding Sugar's personality in, I'm pretty sure he would eliminate her. That's accounted for. I didn't rob Sugar or interfere with the outcome, I just think this challenge works better as a final 3. If you're new here, when I get to the finales of my what ifs, I treat it more like a rewrite at this point because results are all determined now, and I want to give the best ending I can to these finalists. Sky and Sean are both the original finalists, and for the most part played pretty similar games, but there is a lot I would switch when it comes to this finale as a whole, so I'll go over those changes now, but if you don't really care about it, you can just leave here. I'll only cry in my bed for 5 minutes tonight if you do so. Both finalists will still have rough nights as Chris awakes them through the intercom and tells them to meet for the finale. They do so where they have some light trash talk with their competitive sides coming out. Chris brings in the entire eliminated cast to sit in on the finale in peanut gallery seating. Sean and Sky are a bit surprised to see Max, who is dressed up in a normal outfit and seems pleased to see them. Sean addresses Max about it, and Max reveals that after what happened yesterday, he realized being evil isn't for him. Sky blandly states that it's been less than 18 hours, doubtful of his change in heart. Max shrugs, saying he works fast. Max has a confessional stating he is completely truthful and even talked to his mom about getting some babysitting jobs because he ever enjoyed it on the show. The confessional takes a short, sinister turn as he explains that his job is to raise the evil in the world, create a new mastermind of impressionable young brains, and shape them into pure evil. But it still ends on his happy note of him chuckling and explaining only if he can ever fit in the time. Chris debriefs the finale to the finalists, with the challenge elements being the same, but instead of one helper for the whole challenge, helpers will be given to them at each stage through the challenge. One for the sledding, one for the mud pit, and one for the final sprint, which for the time being Chris doesn't reveal the details there, because obviously it's supposed to be a twist. Chris says that they or their helpers won't know when they are coming into the challenge because they will be randomly decided through the same wheel spinner TV he had in the original. In using the robot island, the helper will be instantly transported to them when the TV picks them. Sky, eyeing Sugar, asks what if they get a helper that doesn't want to help them. Chris says every helper is required to help their finalists, but the extent of how helpful they are is up to them. With that, Chris would drop them off the top of the snowy mountain, and the final challenge would begin. For the first random spin of helpers, Sean would get Ella, and Sky would get Sugar. For this part of the challenge, the finalists are required to wait for their helpers to make a sliding device for them, and are allowed to be a part of the creation. Sugar chuckles as this is said, and takes a seat on the floor, pretending to examine the junk pile closely for an idea. Sky rolls her eyes upset, knowing she's just avoiding helping her, asking Sugar if she can hurry up. Sugar says she's trying, and it's hard to sing without proper seating, telling Sky to get on all fours, and Sky groans doing so. Ella gets started right away with Sean pleased at her spirit, but questions her design choices as she seems much more interested in making it look pretty than functional. Sugar is sitting on Sky's back as she shakes from the weight, making Sugar flick her face and tell her to stay still. Sky, annoyed, hatches up a scheme, loudly praising Ella's design, saying that's the prettiest sled she's ever seen, and she doubts anyone could make a better sled than that. Sugar, falling for the bait due to her hatred of Ella, says that sled is terrible and she could do much better. Ella unintentionally eggs her on, saying she believes Sugar would make a much prettier sled than hers. Sugar takes insult in that comment, assuming Ella chose the word prettier instead of better because she doesn't think Sugar can make a better one. Ella tries to explain that's not what she meant, but it's too late as Sugar is already in heavy construction on Sky's sled. Sky, relieved at her plan working, falls to the ground tired from supporting Sugar's weight. Because Ella started her sled first, Sean would ride down the mountain first, but again due to her valuing the look over the efficiency, when Sean rides toward the snow pile, he yells back to Ella asking how to turn the sled, and Ella giggles while shouting back that sleds can't turn, they don't have steering rails. This leads to Sean running into a snow jump, and like Dave and Sky originally, he would fly up it with no extra weight from Jasmine to ride through it, and come down the mountain in a massive snowball. Sugar finishes her sled at this time, and I feel it would be pretty decent. Not anything amazing, interesting, especially to look at, but given she was raised as a farm girl, I figured she's at least decent when it comes to creating things with her hands. Sky does a slow clap from the sled, telling Sugar that sled is much better than Ella's. Sugar takes in the praise, giving a bow, telling Sky she doesn't have to be sorry about not having any metal to give her, and Sky says she isn't, but she is sorry for this, as Sky pushes Sugar down the snowy mountain, and Sky follows shortly after in the sled, passing Sugar on the ride down, and laughs at her, saying actually she isn't that sorry. Sky reaches the bottom, seeing Sean struggling to get out of the massive snowball, and walks past him, telling him to stay frosty in there, she has a challenge to win. Sean touches on his competitive nature, and uses a survival technique he learned to warm up his hands quickly with friction in his breath to warm up the snow around him and squeeze out of the snowball while running to catch up to Sky. Sugar finishes rolling down the mountain, very defeated and tired. She looks up to see the same robot kitty that Sky and Dave found here, and because Sugar knows the robot cat is dangerous since she and Sky found it together in Scarlett's elimination episode, she knows to be careful with it, and when it breathes fire towards her, she dodges the fire, but has to continue running away as the cat chases her. Sky gets to the mud pit first, where her helper for this section, Topher, is transported here. While they discuss who should go into the mud, Sean arrives and gets his helper, Jasmine. Jasmine is very quick to volunteer herself to go under since there's no way Sean could support her on his shoulders, and she wants to help him get the lead. Sean checks in to make sure it's okay, but Jasmine tells him they have no time to waste and she'd do anything to help them win. Sean has a confessional noting her word choice of them and remembers their idea to split the money, realizing Jasmine must still be thinking they'll do that if he wins. He's hysterical at the idea of not investing fully into the zombie bunker and her dumb idea of the money. He ends the confessional looking guilty, saying he'll find a better way to word that. Sky tells Topher that he should go into the mud because he's taller and she can help them move by swimming her arms through the mud to keep her lead. Topher rejects the idea, saying there's no way he'll put his lips on the dirty garden hose. Jasmine and Sean enter the mud as Sky gets annoyed of losing the lead and scolds Topher intensely about all the stuff she's had to go through to get to the end, and she isn't going to lose because some pathetic wuss won't jump into some mud. Topher, being intimidated by this, changes his tune and says, you know, my skin could actually really use a mud cleanse. Sky smiles, saying that's the attitude. Sean and Jasmine have a pretty good lead in the mud. Sky and Topher keep a close following on them. Like the original, Jasmine was freaked out from her claustrophobia in the mud and start heading backwards, running the two duos into each other. Sean and Sky begin grappling with each other above the mud to get past each other, but they notice the hoses of their partners starting to fall into the mud and quickly stop fighting to grab them because neither are cool enough to let their partners drown in mud. But seeing the fighting break up from their kind-hearted actions, Chris gets bored and sends a robot bear into the mud, knocking everyone to the other side. Chris says that both finalists technically skipped over that final section of the mud, so they are both required to take a 5-minute time penalty and wait it out before continuing the last section. Jasmine mentions that he's the one who flew the bear in, so why should Sean be docked time? Sky adds herself onto that too. Sean has a confessional noting how hard that was for Jasmine and how much she's really sticking her neck out for him, and ponders actually sharing the money with her. Chris agrees that's true, but they were the ones that decided to be boring in his finale. Besides, they can't win like this covered in mud because that's not a good look for their victory moment. Sean says he guesses that's a fair point, asking Chris if he has any towels. Chris remarks even better as Chef comes out with a strong powered hose and sprays the floor down clean. The show comes back from a commercial showing about 3 minutes left on the time penalty. Sky asks if they can at least have a debrief of this final part while they're rating, so they don't have to waste time explaining it when the time's up. And Topher, shivering from the cold water, asks if they can also trade other helpers now because he wants to dry off. Chris decides to agree to both points, rolling for Sky's new helper, Scarlett, who again, like last episode, isn't here in person, but as a TV monitor. As Scarlett is transported here in place of Topher, Sky gasps at her present, clearly still disturbed from what she did. Sky has a confessional upset about Scarlett as her helper, and hopes that Sean is just as unlucky as her. The TV begins spinning for Sean's helper, but Chef, dressed as a ninja, destroys the TV in front of the peanut gallery as it's selecting. Leonard challenges the ninja, because of course he would, and casts a fireball spell on him to thwart his evil doing. Chef scratches his head as nothing happens, taunting Leonard and holding his stomach from laughing so hard at him. As he's distracted laughing, Sugar runs past Chef, and the robot cat that was chasing her comes behind Chef and blasts fire at his back, making Chef yelp in pain as he runs away looking for water to put out the fire, and Leonard looks pleased with himself, thinking he did the fireball. Chris informs the finalists that the TV spinner broke, and apparently there was also a fireball cast. Both Sky and Sean look at each other unamused and say Leonard at the same time. Sean asks what that means for his helper then, and Chris informs him since there's nowhere to fairly and randomly decide his helper now, he'll keep Jasmine. Sean celebrates as Sky says that's clearly unfair. Chris, with a massive grin, holds his chin and agrees with Sky and tells her he has an idea to even the playing field, using the TV with the timer on it to show clips of Sean hating Jasmine's idea for the money and not actually wanting to split the money with her. Sean and Jasmine argue as Chris watches with glee, but it gets cut off by the timer ending. Chris smiles, saying he ran short on time but quickly hands the controllers to the helpers and renaming them Hinderers, explaining they have controllers that control the island and their job is to stop either finalist from crossing the finish line across the island where the peanut gallery is being transported before the 10 minutes is up. If the hinderers can accomplish this, then they will split the prize money together, and if either of the finalists can cross first, they win the money. Sean tries to plead with Jasmine that he was okay with splitting the money after he thought about it, but Jasmine still doesn't listen, as Chris blows an air horn and begins the final challenge, forcing Sean to follow Sky. Chris plugs Scarlett controller into her TV, as he informs her that she only has control of the island where the finalists are running, so she shouldn't try to do anything funny to take over the show again, or he'll have a talk with her parole officer when she gets out. Scarlett grins as the cord lights up red, and agrees to play nice with him. I know that's not really how that works with the TV and the cord, but they're special controllers and it's a cartoon. Scarlett turns trees into rockets to shoot at the finalists, and turns the weather terrible as she's excited to torment them. Jasmine looks at her controller, wary about using it, with Scarlett encouraging her to do so. Jasmine says she doesn't want Sean to win after that, obviously. Scarlett tells her they'll be fine, they made it this far. Besides, if they win and split the money, then she can ensure that Sean and her will split her portion, instead of relying on Sean, who will lie through his teeth again. Jasmine's eyebrows furrow as Scarlett mentions his lying, making her mad at him again as she messes with her controller a bit, turning the running area into a blizzard, saying the way he treated her was cold, so this is fitting. The finalists continue through, and right before the end, Scarlett raises the ground below them so they are essentially on a hill, and letting her evil consume her, she creates a miniature tornado on top as rocks begin circling the finalists. She also uses the clouds and stormy weather above to create electric static, and Sean, noticing his hair beginning to move up and being a survivalist, knows that he's about to get shocked by liming, so he jumps up into Sky's arm scared, narrowly dodging the blast. Jasmine gets mad at Scarlett for taking it too far, but Scarlett doesn't relent as she explains that with this money she can pay off her time here in juvie and go back to the real world. Half the money isn't what she planned, but it's more than enough to fund her life, and she won't let anyone stand in the... Scarlett gets cut off by Jasmine turning her TV off, disconnecting her from the island. Jasmine undoes the tornado and lightning storm as she roots for Sean to win in the last 20 seconds. From here, Sky still gets annoyed at the wind being out of reach and stomps on the ground breaking the mountain as both finalists ride down an avalanche, and the alternate endings are the same with either finalist crossing the finish line during the avalanche. In Sean's winning ending, Jasmine still quickly runs to the end where she pulls his arm out of the snow and takes his flower as he apologizes for what happened and re-offers to split the money with her. Jasmine then gives him a kiss in her arms, obviously agreeing. In Sky's winning ending, Chef pulls her out of the snow and awards her the money as the peanut gallery cheers for her win, and Max walks down to shake her hand in congratulation for winning. Sky scoffs, saying she just became a millionaire, she's way too excited for just a handshake, pulling Max in for a hug as he lightly gives one back. And for any Scave people, you can headcanon that they talk here with Sky asking him on a date now that the show's over, and Dave jokingly agreeing that there's no way he could deny a millionaire on that offer, but don't like that relationship, so not for me. And there you go, that was What If Max didn't get removed from the game. This what if took so much longer than I wanted it to. I tried going a bit heavier on the writing because I knew there weren't that many episodes to cover, so I figured I couldn't make it any longer than 20 minutes given that there's only 3 episodes to cover, but thinking it's probably going to be more than 20 minutes. I don't know yet at the time of recording this, but based off everything I said and all my notes, I'm assuming it's probably a little bit more. Even though this what if was still pretty small and like the retrospect there wasn't that much to cover, I actually found it pretty fun. Max is a character I don't really get to work with that much because he's so bad at the game, he's bad at strategy, he's bad at social positioning, he's bad at the physical part. There's no part that Max is good at when it comes to this game, and there's a lot of times, especially in the last 2 Packatu Island what ifs I did, where he got eliminated kinda early because he makes himself such a target and he makes such an enemy out of Scarlett and he does everything wrong at every single turn. There were times where he should have been eliminated in the original and got saved by lucky circumstances, like in Mo Monkey Mo Problems when Ella got eliminated for singing. If Sugar didn't reveal to Chris that Ella sung, then he would have just been eliminated in a normal vote out because he was so bad at knowing what he should do, and he's so gullible, and he's such an obvious ploy and easy number for any villain to work with like Scarlett, but then also annoys Scarlett so much that she's willing to cut him. Like, he's just really, really bad at this game. So it's not a lot of times where I can find a way to save him, but it was fun working for him in this what if. Writing for him is interesting. He's a really strong personality, and it's hard finding that balance with him. He's so arrogant and pompous about constantly bragging how evil and devious he is, but he's actually so not evil, and it's hard to know where that line ends and stops. Like, I had him be sympathetic when Sugar pushed Sky off the cliffside because it made sense to me in the part of his character that isn't really evil. I don't think he'd actually like that, but then again, it's possible that he's still evil in the sense of like bad things can happen as long as it's not involving me, so maybe he wouldn't feel bad for Sky there and they wouldn't create a really short-lived alliance. I don't know, he's such an oddball to work with, and considering I had so little time to really explore his character direction, it was a lot to consider. For the most part, I enjoyed this what if. I definitely think I like it more than the original. I don't think I'd say I like it as some of the other Packatu what ifs I've done, just because those ones are a lot more extensive. But besides that, I was pleasantly pleased. Sorry for it taking longer than it should in this video, probably getting out late because of that, but yeah, bye.